Ted Bundy, born November 24, 1946, remains one of America's most infamous predators. His early life was marked by instability, raised believing his mother was his sister and his grandparents his parents. This deception fueled lifelong identity struggles. Outwardly, Bundy projected success, studying law, engaging in politics, and charming peers, while masking violent urges. His calculated persona allowed him to manipulate victims, feigning helplessness or impersonating authority figures to exploit trust. Between 1974 and 1978, Bundy terrorized multiple states, Washington, Utah, Colorado, and Florida, targeting young women. His crimes involved abduction, torture, sexual violence, and necrophilia, driven by a craving for domination and sadistic gratification. Victims often suffered post-mortem violations, reflecting his depravity. Authorities estimate over 30 murders, though the total remains uncertain. Bundy's downfall began with a 1975 Utah arrest for evasion, which connected him to disappearances. After 2 jailbreaks, he was recaptured in Florida in 1978 following a gruesome sorority attack. Convicted of multiple homicides, he received the death penalty. On January 24, 1989, he was executed by the electric chair. Jeffrey Dahmer, infamously dubbed the Milwaukee Cannibal, murdered 17 young men between 1978 and 1991. Born May 21, 1960, in West Allis, Wisconsin, his outwardly stable childhood masked profound isolation. Shy and withdrawn, his parents' divorce exacerbated abandonment issues, while disturbing behaviors, dissecting animals, hoarding bones, hinted at emerging psychopathy. Dahmer preyed primarily on African American men, luring them to his apartment with promises of money or alcohol. There, he drugged, strangled, and dismembered victims, preserving body parts as trophies. His atrocities included necrophilia, cannibalism, and deranged attempts to create zombies by drilling into skulls and injecting acid. Driven by a warped craving for control and companionship, he compartmentalized his depravity, maintaining menial jobs despite spiraling alcoholism and loneliness. His reign ended in July 1991 when a victim escaped, alerting police who discovered Polaroids of dismembered remains and human skulls in his home. Confessing to 17 murders, Dahmer received 15 life sentences in 1992. On November 28, 1994, he was fatally beaten by a fellow inmate, ending a saga that exposed the terrifying duality of a killer who hid monstrous urges behind a quiet, unassuming facade. John Wayne Gacy, infamous as the Killer Clown, murdered at least 33 young men and boys between 1972 and 1978. Born March 17, 1942 in Chicago, he endured a turbulent childhood under an abusive, alcoholic father who mocked his struggles. Determined to gain social approval, Gacy cultivated a veneer of respectability as a businessman, Democratic precinct captain, and charity volunteer, even performing as Pogo the Clown at children's events. Beneath this facade lurked a predator. Gacy lured victims, often marginalized teens, to his home with promises of work or cash, then subdued them with drugs or alcohol. After sexually assaulting them, he strangled or suffocated his victims, concealing 26 bodies in his crawl space and dumping others in waterways. His community ties initially shielded him from suspicion. The disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Piest in December 1978 triggered a probe that exposed Gacy's horrors. Police discovered skeletal remains beneath his house, leading to his arrest. At his 1980 trial, he admitted to 33 killings but claimed insanity. Jurors rejected this, sentencing him to death. During 14 years on death row, he painted eerie clown artworks. On May 10, 1994, Gacy was executed by lethal injection. Andrei Chikatilo, dubbed the Butcher of Rostov, terrorized the Soviet Union from 1978 to 1990, murdering at least 52 women and children. Born October 16, 1936 in Ukraine, his early life was shaped by poverty, wartime trauma, and humiliation. Raised amid Stalin-era famine, with whispers of cannibalism in his village, he endured bullying for his frail physique and shyness. His father, a World War II prisoner of war, returned branded a traitor, deepening Chikatilo's alienation. Despite earning a teaching degree, he was fired for inappropriate conduct with students, later working as a factory clerk. Outwardly, he maintained a mundane family life, marrying and fathering 2 children. Privately, he preyed on vulnerable victims, luring them to isolated areas with promises of food or money. There, he sexually assaulted, stabbed, and mutilated them, often consuming body parts to fulfill violent fantasies rooted in powerlessness and sexual rage. Soviet investigators initially mishandled evidence, dismissing him as a suspect despite multiple arrests. His spree ended in November 1990 when undercover agents caught him prowling a train station. DNA tests matched his semen and blood to crime scenes, prompting a confession to 56 murders. At his 1992 trial, he ranted about inner demons and societal failures, but was convicted of 52 killings. Sentenced to death, Chikatilo was executed by gunshot on February 14, 1994, his crimes exposing the chilling intersection of systemic neglect and depravity. Aileen Wuornos, infamously labeled America's first female serial killer, murdered 7 men along Florida highways between 1989 and 1990. Born February 29, 1956 in Rochester, Michigan, her life began in chaos, abandoned by her mother at birth, raised by her abusive grandfather, and expelled from home as a teen after enduring sexual violence and pregnancy by rape. Forced into prostitution by 15, she drifted into a transient life marked by alcoholism, petty crime, and deepening rage toward men. Wuornos claimed her killings were acts of self-defense, alleging clients assaulted her during roadside encounters. However, evidence revealed she executed victims execution style, shooting them multiple times before robbing their belongings. Her spree unraveled in 1991 when a stolen vehicle tied her to the murders. Arrested at a biker bar, she initially confessed to ridding the world of predators, but later recanted, accusing police of coercion. At her 1992 trial, prosecutors painted her as a cold-blooded killer motivated by financial gain and vengeance. Diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, Wuornos's erratic behavior and defiant courtroom outbursts fueled media sensationalism. Convicted on 6 counts of murder, she was sentenced to death. During her decade on death row, she vacillated between remorse and nihilism, even requesting her execution. On October 9, 2002, Wuornos died by lethal injection, her case sparking debates about trauma, mental illness, and the rare phenomenon of female serial killers who defy traditional narratives of predatory violence. Richard Ramirez, dubbed the Night Stalker, unleashed a reign of terror across Southern California from 1984 to 1985. Born February 29, 1960, in El Paso, Texas, his volatile childhood shaped his descent into darkness. Exposed to graphic war stories by a Vietnam veteran cousin, subjected to abuse and drawn to Satanism and occult rituals. By his mid-20s, he evolved into a merciless predator, targeting victims of all ages, children, adults, the elderly, without pattern. Ramirez invaded homes after dark, employing shootings, stabbings, and bludgeonings to kill at least 14 people. He sexually assaulted victims and left satanic symbols like inverted pentagrams, weaponizing fear to amplify his infamy. Driven by a lust for chaos and sadistic power, he reveled in his victims' terror, displaying zero remorse. His spree ended in August 1985 when fingerprints and a survivor's testimony led to a citywide alert. Recognized by civilians in East Los Angeles, he was mobbed and detained. Convicted in 1989 of 13 murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries, Ramirez received 19 death sentences. He died in 2013 on California's death row from cancer, his legacy a harrowing testament to unchecked brutality. Jack the Ripper, the alias of an unidentified killer who stalked London's Whitechapel district in 1888, remains one of history's most enigmatic murderers. Targeting impoverished sex workers in the slums of East London, his 5 confirmed victims, killed between August and November 1888, were subjected to horrific violence. His method involved slitting throats followed by grotesque abdominal mutilations, including the removal of organs like uteruses, suggesting anatomical precision. These visceral crimes ignited public panic and media hysteria. Sensationalized by Victorian press, the moniker Jack the Ripper stemmed from taunting letters allegedly sent by the killer, though their legitimacy is debated. Theories about his motives range from sexual sadism and pathological hatred of women to a craving for infamy. Speculation about his identity often points to professions requiring surgical skills such as a doctor or butcher, but no conclusive evidence emerged. Despite Scotland Yard's exhaustive investigation, interviewing over 2,000 people and pursuing countless leads, the Ripper vanished without a trace. Limited forensic tools in the chaotic urban environment thwarted progress. Over 200 suspects have been proposed, including royals and immigrants, yet the case endures as a chilling cold case. Jack the Ripper's legacy persists as a grim symbol of Victorian-era inequality, unsolved mystery, and humanity's darkest impulses. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, terrorized Wichita, Kansas from 1974 to 1991, murdering 10 victims while masquerading as a model citizen. Born March 9, 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas, his outwardly mundane upbringing concealed violent fixations, obsession with bondage, animal cruelty, and sadistic fantasies. As an adult, Rader cultivated a facade of normalcy, a church leader, Cub Scout coordinator, and family man working as a compliance officer. For 17 years, he preyed on neighbors, breaking into homes to strangle, torture, and stage victims in degrading poses. His crimes, meticulously planned, blended brutality with theatricality. Driven by a need for dominance and public terror, Rader taunted police with cryptic letters and poems, signing them BTK to flaunt his anonymity. His downfall came in 2004 when, craving renewed attention, he sent a floppy disk to media, tracked by metadata to his church computer. Arrested in 2005, Rader confessed gleefully, detailing crimes with chilling detachment. Convicted on 10 life sentences, he remains imprisoned, his case epitomizing the banality of evil and the haunting reality that monsters often lurk behind picket fences. Pedro Alonso Lopez, dubbed the Monster of the Andes, ranks among history's most prolific serial killers, confessing to over 300 murders of young girls across Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador in the 1970s to 80s. Born in 1948 in Colombia, his childhood was a crucible of trauma. Expelled at age 8 by his prostitute mother after sexually assaulting his sister, he survived homelessness, repeated sexual abuse, and incarceration for theft, a period during which he alleges being gang-raped in prison. Emerging in the 1970s, Lopez targeted girls aged 9 to 12, luring them from markets with promises of gifts before raping and strangling them. He buried victims in shallow graves, claiming his crimes purified society by preventing girls from becoming sex workers like his mother. His spree ended in 1980 when Ecuadorian authorities caught him mid-abduction. He led police to 53 bodies, though estimates of his total victims remain staggering. Convicted of 110 murders in Ecuador, Lopez received a life sentence, yet bafflingly walked free in 1994 due to legal loopholes. Deported to Colombia, he was briefly detained before release in 1998. Now in his 70s, his whereabouts are unknown, sparking global outrage over judicial failures. Gary Ridgway, infamously dubbed the Green River Killer, murdered at least 49 women, primarily sex workers and runaways, in Washington state between 1982 and 1998. Born February 18, 1949 in Salt Lake City, Utah, Ridgway's childhood hinted at disturbing tendencies: chronic bedwetting, animal cruelty, and a fascination with dominance. His father's demeaning remarks about women reportedly seeded his misogynistic worldview. Despite these traits, Ridgway projected normalcy as a dutiful husband, father, and truck painter, leveraging his blue-collar routine to evade suspicion. Ridgway targeted vulnerable women, luring them with promises of cash or drugs before strangling them, often during sex, and dumping their bodies near the Green River or wooded areas. He retained souvenirs like personal items to relive his crimes. Driven by a need for control and hatred toward those he deemed disposable, his killings reflected societal neglect of marginalized victims. A botched early investigation and outdated forensic methods delayed his capture for nearly 2 decades. In 2001, DNA from a saliva sample linked Ridgway to 4 victims. Arrested and offered a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, he confessed to 48 murders, later revised to 49, and aided in locating remains. In 2003, he received 49 life sentences without parole. Ridgway's chilling admission, "I killed so many women, I have a hard time keeping them straight," underscored his depravity. His case exposed flaws in prioritizing marginalized victims and remains a grim study in the banality of evil, proving how a seemingly ordinary man could harbor monstrous violence for decades. Albert Fish, born Hamilton Fish in 1870, stands among America's most depraved killers. Abandoned to an orphanage after his father's death, he endured brutal abuse there, trauma he later claimed to relish, kindling a warped obsession with pain. His family's history of mental illness and his own religious delusions fueled escalating violence. Posing as a devoted family man in New York, Fish concealed a monstrous double life. He inserted needles into his flesh, abducted children, and engaged in torture, murder, and cannibalism. His most infamous crime, the 1928 abduction of 10-year-old Grace Budd, ended with a chilling letter to her parents detailing her rape, murder, and consumption. Forensic analysis of the letter's envelope led to his arrest. Fish confessed to multiple child killings, though the full count remains unclear, citing divine urges and sadistic pleasure. Despite psychiatric diagnoses of psychosis, he was deemed legally sane. Convicted of Grace's murder, the 65-year-old was executed via electric chair in 1936. Fish's case epitomizes the intersection of mental derangement and pure evil. Ed Gein, infamously dubbed the Butcher of Plainfield, became a macabre icon whose crimes inspired horror classics like Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Born August 27, 1906 in La Crosse County, Wisconsin, Gein's upbringing was steeped in isolation and fanatical religiosity. His domineering mother, Augusta, preached that women, except herself, were sinful, while his alcoholic father and brother belittled him, cementing his social alienation. After their deaths, Gein spiraled into twisted solitude on his family's decaying farm. Between the 1940s to 50s, Gein exhumed corpses from local graveyards, crafting furniture, clothing, and masks from human skin and bones, a grisly attempt to reconstruct his mother. His obsession escalated to murder in 1954 when he shot tavern owner Mary Hogan, followed by hardware store clerk Bernice Worden in 1957. Authorities discovered Worden's gutted body hanging in his shed, alongside a house strewn with body parts, skull bowls, a belt of nipples, and a face mask made from a victim's skin. Gein's crimes, rooted in psychosis and unresolved maternal fixation, led to his 1957 arrest. Deemed unfit for trial initially, he was confined to a mental institution until 1968, when a reevaluation found him legally sane. Convicted of Worden's murder, he spent his remaining years in psychiatric care, dying in 1984. Though linked to only two killings, Gein's necrophilic artistry and warped psyche left an indelible mark on true crime and horror lore. David Berkowitz, infamously known as the Son of Sam, terrorized New York City from 1976 to 1977, killing 6 people and wounding 7 others in a series of random shootings. Born Richard David Falco on June 1, 1953, Berkowitz's early life was marked by instability. Abandoned by his birth mother and adopted by a middle-class couple, he struggled with feelings of rejection and anger. As a teen, he enlisted in the army but grew increasingly isolated, later fixating on occult ideologies and delusions of demonic possession. Berkowitz targeted young couples parked in lovers' lanes, using a .44 caliber bulldog revolver to shoot victims through car windows. His crimes sparked citywide panic, amplified by taunting letters he sent to police and journalists. In one, he claimed to be following orders from his neighbor Sam Carr's demon-possessed black Labrador retriever, a narrative later dismissed as a bid for notoriety. A parking ticket near his final crime scene led to his arrest in August 1977. Initially pleading insanity, Berkowitz confessed to the shootings, framing himself as a monster deserving punishment. Convicted in 1978, he received 6 life sentences. In prison, he recast his crimes as satanic acts before claiming a religious awakening in the 1990s, branding himself a born-again Christian. Now in his 70s, Berkowitz remains incarcerated, his case a haunting study in media-driven hysteria, the allure of infamy, and the blurred line between madness and manipulation. Charles Ng and Leonard Lake, known as the Death Valley Duo, orchestrated a campaign of torture, sexual violence, and murder in 1980s California, driven by misogynistic fantasies and survivalist extremism. Born in Hong Kong in 1960, Ng's troubled youth included theft and a dishonorable discharge from the U.S. Marines. Lake, born in 1945 in San Francisco, harbored paranoid militaristic ideologies, drafting Operation Miranda, a manifesto outlining plans to enslave women in a post-apocalyptic bunker. The pair met through criminal circles, bonding over shared obsessions with control and domination. From 1983 to 1985, they lured victims, often young women and couples, to a remote cabin in Calaveras County. There, they subjected captives to rape, torture, and forced labor, filming their atrocities. Lake's bunker, rigged with restraints and surveillance, became a chamber of horrors where victims were starved, humiliated, and executed. Their spree unraveled in 1985 when Ng shoplifted a vice grip, prompting a police stop. Lake swallowed cyanide during interrogation, dying instantly while Ng fled to Canada, where he was arrested for assaulting a security guard. Extradited to California after a 6-year legal battle, Ng faced trial in 1998, where evidence included 40 pounds of victim remains and gruesome videotapes. Convicted of 11 murders, he received the death penalty. Lake and Ng's crimes, marked by ritualistic cruelty and apocalyptic delusions, expose the depths of human depravity. Their case remains a grim reference in true crime, symbolizing the intersection of sadism, survivalist paranoia, and the banality of evil. Now on San Quentin's death row, continues to appeal his sentence, while Lake's suicide denied justice to countless families haunted by the duo's unresolved legacy. Luis Garavito, dubbed La Bestia, is among history's most prolific serial killers, confessing to the rape, torture, and murder of 138-plus boys across Colombia in the 1990s. Born January 25, 1957, in Geneva, his childhood was marred by poverty, physical abuse by his alcoholic father, and alleged sexual assault by neighbors, traumas that warped his psyche. Garavito drifted through South America posing as a street vendor or monk to lure impoverished boys aged 6 to 16 with promises of money or gifts. His victims were often strangled, mutilated, and left in remote areas. Garavito later claimed he targeted neglected children to cleanse society of poverty, a delusion mirroring his self-loathing. His spree unraveled in 1999 when a survivor identified him, leading to his arrest. In a controversial plea deal, he received a reduced 22-year sentence, later extended to 40 years, for cooperating with authorities to locate remains. As of the latest confirmed reports, Luis Garavito died in prison on October 12, 2023, in Valledupar, Colombia. He reportedly died from cancer-related complications. Many victims' families still seek closure as dozens of murders remain unverified. Garavito's crimes, driven by sadism and a twisted savior complex, expose the devastating consequences of societal neglect and judicial fragility.